Okay, so whatever final definition he's come up with, the thing I want you to remember what continuous monitoring is all about is what's in red right here. What we're talking about is risk management, bottom line. The network is a capability, and you need to manage that capability. I like to say, as a helicopter pilot, I used to fly the OH-58. It's a little bird out there, and I had this operations manager that told me how fast I could fly it. When the door's off, I can go 100 knots. He said, don't go above 100 knots. Bad things can happen. Well, I'll tell you what, if somebody's shooting at my ass, I'm going to fly that little helicopter as fast as it will go until I'm sure the blades are going to fly. That's called risk management, right? So that's what the network is. It's a capability. But we want to make sure that you use an automated data feeds. This makes it important to the system administrator. So they don't have to go in, stop their work, come over here and say, yeah, I patched 100 machines today, and I did this today, and I did that today. No, I want them to keep their heads down, and fly the aircraft, let somebody else take care of the data collection and the aggregation. So whatever definition that Peter comes up with, just remember it's risk management based upon automated data feeds. Okay, and we're quantifying the risk. And that's the key thing that I think the State Department was able to do. They weren't so much interested in saying that you're 98% compliant. That's great, but let's talk about what the risks are on the network here. Let's talk about that 2% that are not patched. What is that actual risk exposure going to do to our business or our industry if one of those boxes gets collapsed? Because the adversary don't have to get lucky once, right? That's why I'm such a passionate supporter of the system administrators out there. Because every day, the poor bastards show up to work, they got 1,000 things to do on their list, and they got 8 hours. And so what we're trying to do here is help them prioritize their 8 hours of work to make sure that they can reduce the most amount of risk within the time they have at the terminal. Next slide. So here are some of the essential characteristics as we start looking at this thing called CMRS from the working group perspective. So if you don't have accurate data and nobody has confidence in your data, then you're wasting your time. You got to make sure that everyone has the right buy-in on the data itself. And then we also need to make sure you have the visibility. If you don't have the visibility, you don't know what you need to protect. So if you can't see it, you can't protect it. So accurate data source, right visibility. You also need to look at the automated data feeds. This is real key because, like I said, the system administrators that are out there are too busy to stop what they're doing, so they can do a manual report and tell you what they did, and then we wait weeks later to have that data rolled up, and it really doesn't give us a whole lot of benefit. And then we also want to be able to quantify the risk. That's what I call the secret sauce. That's what in the State Department they have this thing called iPost. And they were able to say, if you don't have patch X, then that is actually going to cost you 10 risk points. If you don't have patch Y, that's a big one, that's 100 risk points. So now you drive in behavior for that system administrator because they have a view that they can look at what I call their kids, all their automated systems as their kids, and they know which ones are the problem kids because they can sort on them, and all the ones with the higher risk points get right up to the top. And so through an automated data feeds that you can quantify the scores on, that's the beauty of this thing called a CMRS. Then we want to basically, just ensure that the effectiveness of these security controls. And so, without the metrics, it's hard for us to go back to senior leaders and articulate, that we are in fact having a positive impact, and that we need to continue to sustain this effort and support it. And the other bonus up there, you can read through this. Next slide. Okay, so that's kind of my deal as one of the co-chairs on the CMRS working groups. Now what I'll do is I'll cover some of the highlights of in my life of the last 8 months within the Army's pilot for CMRS. It's a little over a year ago that I first met John Struford over at the Department of State, and I got a demonstration of their iPost, and I was very impressed. I was damn impressed. And so I took what they had, I went back and I convinced my boss to convince his boss that the Army really needed to do a pilot and to flatterize the Department of State by taking their code and plagiarizing it and standing it up in the Army. And so that's exactly what we've done. And so over the last 8 months, there's been a lot of energy, a lot of interest in this thing called CMRS. And I've been getting calls from like the National Nuclear Security Agency, from the National Reconnaissance Agency. I mean, all people had no clue that we're even out there, but they all were very interested in what the Army was doing with the CMRS. It got to be so popular, as a matter of fact, I found my picture on the cover of the FedTech magazine. It's now become my new favorite magazine, by the way. I got like a dozen copies. You know, damn, I look good. You know? But anyways, so there's a lot of interest out there, and for a lot of good reasons. Because I think this thing called CMRS is going to be the way in which USG is going to go. And if I have anything to do with it, is how FSMA will actually be evaluated. Next time. So here's the intent, basically, is to let's facilitate this thing called risk management. Let's get the situational awareness out there near real time. And the bottom line is to improve our IA posture, improve security. So how are we going to do this? I'm not a program management professional. It would have helped had I been one. But I said, well, boss, it sounds pretty simple to me. We just take the state's code, we load it up, and we send it Army data. We get it scored out. And so I wanted to leverage the tools that the Army's already spent a lot of money in. Things called HBSS, the Host-Based Security System, as well as SCCM, CIO-Center, IT. Those were the primary goals out there. And so I said, look, you can use this. I didn't ask for any money, so I think that helped with getting the approval. And so he said, okay, Jones, go forth and prosper. So I looked around, not having any resources of my own. I was able to go out there and persuade folks like Peter Elton from this organization, as well as folks from VISTA. We actually had them actually stand up a copy of what they call the Portable Risk Score Management. Essentially, it was an IPOS Lite version that we got. So they stood it up. They went through the CNA process. I talked to the Department of Homeland Security and started getting those buy-ins and say, hey, listen, if we go down this path, we can take FSMA reporting off the plates of the Army. So I kind of got my leadership a little bit more excited about some of this. Got a lot of the system administrators and those folks that have to report FSMA were a lot interested in what I was doing. So I call it the Coalition of the Willing. And it's been a great partnership with Peter and these other colleagues. It's amazing what you can do when you get a lot of people to agree to say, hey, let's talk about what we can do as opposed to why can't we do this? Excellent. So here's what it is. Basically, if you look at the what they call the risk dashboard, it has these 10 categories down here at the bottom. That's what the Department of State came up with. It was no other means than them just studying and looking at their networks and categorizing the risk, how it meant and was meaningful to them. And it was good enough for me because they already had it all figured out. So we took it as is, and we tried to then use some other technologies within the DoD, a protocol called the Secure Content Automation Protocol, SCAP, and leverage some of that effort that we've had deployed with our HBSS technologies. And so we went through some code and some shredder creations where they can transform the data. Again, to support that, it means to have it as an automated data feed. But at the end of the day, they're able to tee it up and say, okay, so what are the risk categories? And then what are the raw scores and the overall scores that come up with it? And that's kind of key there because that's really quantifying those risks and those vulnerabilities that are actually out there on the network. So I don't really care about your 85% compliant. I didn't talk to you about the 15% that's going to bite us in the ass if you don't get it patched and don't get it patched soon, right? So next slide. So here's what I came up with as a notional view of the dashboard within the Army. Like I said, Type A,